Also, tonight, I think everybody knows me, but in case there's anybody sitting there that doesn't, but my name is Chris Murray, and I'm the chair for the next 2 years of the party. Tonight we're going to recognize the local media for their contribution to the community, and the certificates of recognition are being given to the organizations, the news media outlet, and not to the people that are here. We wouldn't want them to feel uncomfortable, although we know how some people vote when they go to the polls, but we're not going to advertise it. George Young is here from 96.7, again, CC, operations manager. Christopher Carpenter, a great reporter with the Macon County News. Kenny Wiki, publisher and editor of the Highlands newspaper. And Charlie Bass over there with Dove. Thank you very much.
And Barbara.
Oh, our guest speaker. I'm getting there. I've got you in the important section. And of course, the one and only Barbara McCrae with the Franklin Press. We've got a couple of new people here that I'd like to think I talked into getting here. I think this is their first. Alex and Rebecca Tipton. And
to buy dinner for us tonight?
No. And a new friend of mine, Keith Iton, and work on him tonight because he hasn't registered yet. We want to make sure he registers the right way when he makes the money. But we appreciate you all. And is there anyone here that is the first time here at one of our meetings that's here tonight whose name I didn't mention? And if you are, could you just stand and say hi?
Sandy and Bob Swisher.
Well, thank you for coming. I just want to say a couple of words before I introduce Barbara. As evidenced by the First Amendment when it was written and made part of the Bill of Rights in our Constitution, our founders understood the importance of freedom of speech and freedom of the press in this great experiment called the United States. This well-thought-out amendment became one of the strongest pillars of our republic. Our contemporary media offers an informational highway unsurpassed by any other nation on earth. Local media is much more personal, close to home, and much more connected to our daily lives and our political atmosphere. As Maconians, we enjoy access to local printed media through letters to the editor, rants and raves, or just reporting events we're a part of. Printed media and radio also provide us with interviews conducted with political candidates, making our choices more educated and hopefully more beneficial to our community. Radio provides us with a variety of programming, current news, up-to-date weather reports, and the enjoyment of music produced by America's great musicians. Christian radio provides us programs that have a positive impact on families and our relationship with God. It represents a combination of the free exercise of religion and freedom of speech. In addition, our local media continues to make announcements about events and meetings of political and civic organizations free of charge, allowing us the ability to communicate with our membership, peaceably assemble, and sometimes affect policy in local government. As citizens of Macon County and as Republicans, we appreciate the invaluable contribution of the local media to our community. We know that without freedom of the press, freedom of speech, and freedom of religion, we would be a much different nation and would most likely suffer the tyranny we see so many other places around the world. Tonight, we would like to thank you for your collective contribution to our community. And we'd like to present each of the media outlets here through their representatives certificates of appreciation. But before I do that, I'd like to introduce Barbara McCrae, but let me just say a little bit about her. Barbara joined the Franklin Press as editor 8 years ago after retiring from Duke Power Company in corporate communications. She previously worked as a reporter at the Franklin Press and wrote columns for the paper on a freelance basis while working for Duke Power. Her degree is in biology, which is strange for a journalist, but handy for her application as a naturalist. She also worked for IBM as a systems engineer in Atlanta before moving to Franklin in 1973. She's proud to be the daughter of a career United States Air Force officer, World War II veteran, pilot, and POW, the granddaughter of a U.S. Army officer and World War II veteran, and the widow of a U.S. airman and World War II veteran, the late James McCrae. It is my pleasure to introduce our friend and guest speaker, Barbara McCrae.
Can you hear me? Thank you. Well, good evening, and thank you very much for a lovely dinner and a chance to visit with all of you tonight. Thank you, too, for hosting this event to celebrate the First Amendment of the U.S. Constitution. Nothing is dearer to a newspaper editor or a newspaper person than freedom of speech and freedom of the press and the related issues of open government and public access to information. We are most appreciative of the support that Republican members from our district have consistently given to these principles. And we encourage you to encourage them to always vote for legislation that supports open government. One thing I've learned as a member of the working press is that freedom of speech is enshrined not just in the American Constitution, but in the heart of the American public. People have great faith in the power of the press. They want to have their say. They strongly value the opportunity to write a letter to the editor that expresses their opinions. Even people who may not read the paper or pay much attention to what's going on in the community will turn to the media when something important happens in their lives. If they need to tell the world about a sick child, celebrate a major life event, or blow the whistle on a wrong that they witnessed or that they experienced, they immediately think of us. That is a connection I hope will never be broken. The mission statement of Community Newspapers Incorporated, which owns the Franklin Press, includes this unequivocal statement, quote, "Our mission is to be fundamentalists in our support of the public's right to know and the right of free speech and press." Some years ago, we added the rants and raves section to the paper. It proved to be the most controversial thing we've ever done. People love it. People hate it.
Amen.
Some people criticize the fact that it is anonymous speech, and I understand that criticism, but the rants have reinforced for me the absolute importance of free speech in the life of the average person. Sadly, people are not always in a position to speak openly. They may fear losing their jobs or recriminations against a family member. But they still feel that they have something that must be said. We don't allow everything in the rants. Maybe you think we do, but we don't. For example, if you have a burning desire to tell the world how much you hate your ex-spouse, forget it. You can't say that in our newspaper. Space is always a problem for us, and of course we have rules about what we consider appropriate. People sometimes call me demanding to know why their rant wasn't used. I enjoy these conversations because it reinforces for me how important it is for them to express themselves. Even if nobody knows who they are, they want to have their say. Freedom of speech is not an absolute right, of course. Our newspaper imposes standards that we consider appropriate for the community that we serve. But on a broader scale, out in the wide world, there are things you simply cannot do. And yelling fire in a crowded theater is a classic example of that. Part of my job as an editor is to decide what is appropriate for our particular venue. And that decision sometimes takes a lot of effort. It's not always black and white. We may argue among ourselves, and we may spend a few sleepless nights before we come to a consensus about whether a story should run or not. In the wider public arena, there is constant testing of the right of free speech. For example, my right to speak freely may conflict with your right to your privacy. Drawing the line sometimes can be very hard to do. just now there's a lot of action in the free speech world going on online, in blogs and tweets and all that other stuff that I barely understand. It's like the wild west of words out there. There's no editor in a lot of these venues to intervene and require standards. Things like we require, like sources, evidence, proper use of language. Things get very dangerous online. People can hide behind aliases, and you have no way of knowing if someone who's claiming to be an expert really is. And how all that is going to play out, I have no idea. I wish I knew. It's just a fascinating thing to watch. Nobody wants the government to control the internet, but I have to say that some of what is happening online is very dangerous and very frightening. So just now we have all these things going on. We have people going online trying to see how far they can take free speech. And on the other hand, the usual attacks on the free press continue. There's nothing new about this. Human beings want to be free. We all want to be free to speak as openly as we wish and express our own opinions, whatever they may be. And this is especially true in areas like religion and politics, things that are so important to us. At the same time, most of us are pretty thin-skinned. We don't like being criticized. Some of us can't even bear to be called out for a mistake. Some of us can't even bear it if someone disagrees with us. Public officials can think of myriad reasons why they don't want their actions to be open to public scrutiny. Sometimes, like the rest of us, they just can't take criticism. And of course, I'm accepting all the public officials that are in this room. Sometimes, I hate to say this, but sometimes public officials may be doing something that they shouldn't, maybe even something crooked. And they really don't want anyone to find out about that, so they find a way to cover up. That is the path to totalitarianism. It's no coincidence that the free press is the first casualty of any totalitarian regime. No dictator values open government or free public access. A free press is truly the best guarantee of good government, the best protector of democracy, even though you disagree with the press. Thankfully, freedom of speech and freedom of the press are enshrined as rights in our Constitution, but we should never be lulled into thinking that we are safe as a result. Without constant vigilance, these rights could be lost. They are constantly under assault. In our state, the North Carolina Press Association looks out for these basic rights on behalf of the people and the member newspapers. NCPA employs 3 attorneys to assist member newspapers in this ongoing struggle, and they stay busy. That tells you how many cases come up in the state of North Carolina where someone feels that a government has not provided access to a meeting or to a record that the public should have a right to see. The most recent instance of an assault on freedom of the press was a bill that would have allowed local governments to publish legal notices on their websites by bypassing the traditional requirement for newspaper publication. That bill, which is called electronic notice, seems to have been inspired by a sponsor's antagonism for a particular newspaper. But ostensibly, the reason for it has been given as a cost-saving measure because they don't have to pay the legal fee for the ads. This bill received support from statewide county and municipality groups, but I'm proud to say that the town of Franklin went on record opposing it. NCPA mounted a very strong public campaign against this bill, and it was soundly defeated. This is the rationale behind the opposition. Most of us don't get up in the morning and run to our computer to see what legal notices have been posted on the town website or the county website. A lot of people in rural North Carolina or even in towns and cities may not even have a computer, let alone regular access to the internet. So they wouldn't have any way to access these notices if they were only online. but most people have access to a local newspaper. We strongly believe that public notices should be public, and we are grateful that the General Assembly agreed with us this time. I just found out today that there are indications the bill may be coming up again. The sponsor hates the News and Observer, apparently, and he's just going to keep bringing this forward. Well, the fight isn't over. The fight for these freedoms will never be over as long as human beings are human beings. And sometimes it takes courage to stand up and unequivocally for free speech, especially when you don't agree with the other guy is saying. Sometimes it just takes a wholehearted commitment. I'll never forget the first time I saw an editor gleefully publish a letter that tore him literally to shreds. If the criticism pained him, he did not let it show. He cared so fervently for the right of the people to speak freely that he was happy to allow them to exercise that right, even at his own expense. I've tried to follow his example. Sometimes I get my feelings hurt, but I try. Most newspaper people really are committed to this, really are. We're glad to publish everyone's opinions. They don't have to agree with us. We may be wrong. Well, it's great to have you all as allies in this important cause. And Chris, focusing attention on the First Amendment, as you all are doing tonight, is a vital service in behalf of our democracy. And on behalf of all the local media and our community, I thank you.